into a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unpanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. I am Zachary Kaiser. Welcome to Legacy News, episode 11, and we got a special one for this one. The Centurion, and honestly, the greatest failed president in the history of the United States. We're going to talk about it. Welcome in, Andrew Joseph.
I
How
love
you
that
doing
song. Every
tonight?
time we stop to record, I start dancing to that song. It's a great song, even though it's AI generated.
AI is
AI
amazing.
Conan
Excellent.
90.
Yeah, AI is amazing. That was fantastic that the AI. All I did was I said, give me something that's agorist, crypto, and anarchist, and
Right.
against the government with the legacy right, and it came up with that. So it gave me two options. One was like some stupid like dubstep type deal, and then you had this R&B. I'm like, the R&B is awesome. The dubstep was whatever. But
It ain't no George Carlin, but it's definitely something.
yeah, it's not George Carlin. If it was George Carlin, then it would be real. It would be as
Copyright
real
strike.
as real can be. Yeah, probably. Uh, so speaking of George Carlin, real and based, Jimmy Carter passed over the weekend. Before we jump into, because I got a couple videos. One, I think you libertarians, this comes from Reason. Oh, the evil Reason. But libertarians, you should be able to be you would find you should be able to find some common ground in this video by Nick Gillespie. Gillespie, yeah,
Brown,
but
like Jimmy Carter Brown, like Peanuts.
yeah, like peanuts. But and then the other one could be very fulfilling to the narrative of QAnon people. He exposes some things on a Jimmy on a David Letterman episode. So
we get to touch a Jimmy.
So we get to touch a Jimmy. Yeah, you've been wanting to say that for a while. But before we jump in, what are your thoughts on Jimmy Carter?
Well, I mean, he's not blue pilled, that's for sure. I mean, he did a lot of hard work. He did things that most people wouldn't even dare politically do, because it was the right thing to do for the country, economically.
economically speaking, but also on a voluntary aspect. I would actually say that besides his very failed political career, which could
That
have
was the
its
work.
reasons. Yeah, that was a work. But as an individual and a human being, I mean, wasn't he involved in for Humanity? Like on the
Yeah,
ground, like boots on the ground, like real work, not just like saying it, I fund it, I donate to it. No, like
like
wasn't he a part of the actual founding?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah. And he actually boots on the ground, real
it
work,
was working.
hands
Yeah,
on. Like he actually helped people. Like he actually helped put people who needed homes in homes. And
he
there's a
put the
yeah,
salt.
so
He put the salt on the peanuts in the earth.
exactly. Exactly. So but with that everybody, let's jump in. This is a 2-minute clip. I'm going to wake up the QAnon folks first in a 2.5 minute clip coming from this Twitter account is Shadow of Ezra, but it is very intriguing the exposure that Jimmy Carter uh, does on David Letterman.
What is the source of this? The abuse of women, essential slavery, human trafficking, on and on.
Well, it's the worst human rights abuse on earth, and it's basically unaddressed. I'll start with the worst statistic that I know, and that is that 160 million girls are now missing from the face of the earth because they were murdered at birth by their parents or either selectively aborted when the parents find out that the fetus is a girl. So that's many people are missing, and they're all girls who are missing. The second,
and how many countries represented in this?
a good many countries. I don't know how many parents in America would rather have a boy than a girl if they're very poor and they feel they can't support children. But in about 15 years ago, there was an accurate assessment in China, and 50 million were already missing there because the Chinese government had mandated one is best, two is most. And then India has had the same problem with them, and in many other countries as well. So now, for instance, in China and India and South Korea and some other countries, young men can't find brides to marry. So they buy brides, and that increases the amount of slavery that exists on earth. The slave trade now is much greater than it ever was in the 19th century. It amounts to about $32 billion a year. And the United States State Department is required by law now to assess the slavery market. And they estimate that 800,000 slaves are sold across international borders every year. And 80% of those slaves sold are young girls who are being sold into the sex slavery. And this occurs, about 100,000 of them are in the United States, not sold across international borders. Atlanta is a key of a human trafficking or slavery trade.
How and why would it be? Well, how and why does it exist anywhere? How and why would Atlanta be the center of it in the United States?
I think because we have the largest airport on earth, and people come there from all over the southern part of the hemisphere, where girls can be bought cheaper than in other parts. In the southern part of a hemisphere, in Latin America, and also, say, in Africa and so forth, in some parts of Asia, you can buy a girl, they can buy a girl for $1,000. In Europe, Europe and so forth, it costs up to $8,000.
Dropping some red pills right there.
Jeez, oh Pete, $1,000 for a girl in Asia, and that was at the time of that filming. I don't know how far along that was. I think that was he looked like he was probably in his 70s or 80s. So that was, and it was David Letterman. So he's been off the air from his actual late night show since 2011. So I think that had to have been like mid 2000s. So Jimmy Carter in his 80s post presidency, basically dropping a bunch of red pills, $1,000 in Asia at least for a little girl.
That's insane.
What did he say? 8,000 in Europe? Europeans are a bunch of fucking pedophiles.
PDF files, as I see them on Facebook with the comment nowadays.
Well, yeah, because you gotta
censor. You gotta block the censor, right?
You gotta self-censor, because you know what? I don't think YouTube's gonna cancel us if I just tell him that
Wood chipper.
Zuckerberg is
Wood chipper.
yeah, Zuckerberg deserves the wood chipper. So does Google's AI for racism. I didn't say that. Google said that. But I mean, he did. He dropped what everybody now is starting to finally wake up and see, especially with the uncovering of the Epstein files, which of course we're never going to see what was in that actual client list, and who has actually been on that island. You can only go so far with the flight logs, but at the same
Bill
time,
Clinton.
yeah, Bill Clinton, yeah. I mean, but at the same time, it just it's overexposure. And Jimmy Carter proves that he wasn't a part of their little mission. And that's probably, and that and honestly, when it comes down to it, that's probably why his 4 years as president was an articulate failure.
They
Also,
probably threw
people
him under
don't.
the bus. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, honestly, with the Iranian American hostage situation in 1979, 1980, to end his presidency, there's a reason why that happened under his watch. Which, by the way, it was under his watch that that the Americans were able to. There was a negotiation that was able to be had, and the Americans were released. They just saved it to release that known fact. They weren't to be released until after Reagan. Makes you wonder what the fuck's in Reagan's skeleton, or what skeletons are in Reagan's closet, considering he was a communist in the 30s. Accordingly, the Communist Party of America thought he was so stupid that they in 1936 they didn't want him a part of their party, but he was a commie. And they call Jimmy Carter avid. I mean, the Democrats are commies. The Democrats are leftists. The funny thing is about that is neither party are leftists. They're all on the right. The idea of the left-right paradigm varies differently in comparison to it is. It's all a spook, because if you go to Europe, it's exactly the opposite. So, so the left-right paradigm is kind of a joke. Historically, the right has been authoritarian. And guess who the biggest authoritarians are now, since they have the most of the power influence?
Who?
The Democrats. So there you go.
Really?
So, really? But the fact of the matter is Jimmy Carter dropping that on national television. Too bad it was late night. Not everybody could stay up and watch David Letterman. But it was national. It was nationally syndicated live television on network TV, and him dropping that is eye-opening.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't wake you up, if that doesn't get your blood boiling, if that doesn't get you so, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. If that doesn't get you pissed and want to get out the wood
at the very
chipper,
least. Yeah.
we are controlled by a bunch of global pedophiles.
PDF files. That's kind of funny how
PDF
that, how that works.
And Jimmy Carter exposed it in that old
And
clip. That's like 20 years old at least.
Yeah.
And yet he's a worthless human being because he's a Democrat. Yeah, he signed the worthless, stupid Department of Education. He signed in the law of the Department of Education. Yes, he signed in the law of FEMA. In his case, to his what's the word I'm looking for?
Oh man.
To his defense, he most likely signed it on a standard of using the government for a positivity. Obviously, we know for a fact that government doesn't do anything for humanity.
These are my principles. So as soon as I leave, they're going to change it to their principles and do 1,000 times worse.
Yeah,
that's why everyone is a modern, a classical Keynesian, right?
Exactly. Keynesian economics is a joke. Keynes was also a PDF file.
Oh yeah, how did you know? Hey, I think I saw a post about it on Facebook somewhere. So Bishop.
Probably. I think I saw his diary on Facebook somewhere years ago. Someone released it, and he actually said he likes to
go to
pay
Europe.
for.
To Egypt. I'm sorry. He likes to be the Egypt. The boys in bed are fine, or something. I think it was his words.
Yeah, something like that. Boys in bed are fine. And speaking of the Egypt thing, he did like to take trips to Egypt.
This episode's canceled. We're not
Probably.
about to talk about it. It's because it's a Jimmy Carter episode. That's exactly it.
Hey, it's a Jimmy Carter episode, but you know what? The fact that it's Jimmy Carter, I don't think we're gonna get canceled. As long as it just says Jimmy Carter. So thank you, Jimmy. Rest in peace, by the way. You are in heaven.
This is happens when you touch Jimmy.
All right, that one might get us canceled. So, well, here's the next one, and this is one's for you libertarians out there. This comes from Reason. Oh my God, Reason. But
it's better than Cato.
It is better than Cato. It is better than Cato. Cato is a Washington think tank. That's all you have to say about it. But here we are. Very insightful, actually.
Jimmy Carter was perhaps the most successful ex-president in American history, winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his work promoting human rights and economic and social development. But his single term as president is largely remembered as a series of failures and missteps, sometimes literally. Gas lines, a record high combination of unemployment and inflation called the Misery Index, and Americans being held hostage by Iranian revolutionaries for over a year all fueled the perception that Carter was a weak and ineffective leader. When he collapsed during a 6-mile run, it personified for many the exhaustion of the country under his leadership. But there was at least one way in which Carter excelled as president. He was, in the words of 2002 Nobel-winning economist Vernon Smith, the great deregulator. Carter forced the airline industry, along with interstate trucking and freight rail, to compete for business with powerful and positive effects that continue to this day. Reason talked to Smith about Carter, whom he met at a White House event for American Nobel Prize winners.
Vernon Smith, thanks for talking to Reason.
Well, it's great to be here.
One of your co-Nobelists, the year you won the Nobel Prize, was Jimmy Carter. What was your impression of Jimmy Carter?
Actually, very favorable. See, George Bush was president, and he invited the 9 American Nobelists to the White House. So I met Jimmy Carter. And I told him, I said, you're my favorite Democratic president. So I didn't make much of a commitment there. He said, well, why? I said, because you deregulated the airlines, railroads, and trucks. I said, everybody recognizes that as the most spectacular deregulation event in history. I mean, it's just incredible what happened to those industries that were being crippled by regulation. And he smiled. He said, we're very proud of that.
Do you remember what was flying like before deregulation?
I remember paying quite a lot to fly. I would give lectures in Winnipeg, Regina, a bunch of Canadian universities. And I remember flying from those. Those cities weren't very far apart, but it'd be $800 or $900. And the interesting thing, on Saturdays and Sundays, those planes were typically empty. But in America, they were required to fly them. You see, in order to hold the route, you get the right to fly it only if you always provide the service. So all that interference. It was not sensitive to the fine structure you see of consumer demand. And
a lot of people still make this complaint, though, that before deregulation, it was classy to fly and people wore suits and ties and that you had real meals on the plane.
This is the atmosphere on a jet clipper flight. Delicious food adds to the enjoyment. It's prepared in 4 simultaneously operating galleys where dishes can be cooked in 5-minute ovens.
And now, after deregulation, it's like riding the bus.
That's what people are willing to pay for. You see, they like those cheap tickets, and if they're buying, they're gonna get just the service that they're buying. And before that, airlines couldn't compete on price, so they competed on meals. I remember flying American, and if you ordered it ahead of time, they had a seafood tray that was just really great. You can't get any of that kind of stuff now.
Yeah, but if you're paid $800, you might as well have a good meal, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did the end of nationally regulated interstate trucking change the economy?
Well, it was just a whole lot more price competitive. And trucks were now going on the more profitable routes and also profitable commodities. They were pricing it to clear the market, and a lot of the new goods would pay more for rapid deliveries. And then also you had the railroads starting to experiment with hauling trailers on flat cars. And the whole piggybacking industry now, as it was called then, was created. And so for long distance hauls, it paid, you see, to use the railroads and not the highways. And then we had fishyback come in. I mean, these containers went overseas and in boats. And now look at the cargo, these huge floating carriers that have those containers. Those it's just really incredible what's happened. One of the things I learned from Jimmy Carter was that, he's trying to bring medical health benefits to poor populations all over the world. What's his biggest impediment in these countries? Governments. Jimmy Carter was discovering the problem with governments because the typical government in these countries, they don't want him to come in. Why would the Iraqs want him to come in and help the Kurds, you see, with medical stuff? So he was having a lot of trouble with the World Health Organization, getting access to actually the people that needed help, because he could only get there through the government. And so that was an interesting story. I wonder if it would have changed his ideas as a president. He had that experience first.
How should we remember Jimmy Carter?
As a great deregulator.
Man. Is it bad that the first thing I thought it was, and they talked about that guy's name, was Vermin Supreme? He foreshadowed Vermin Supreme.
Oh God. I guess he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner for the
ponies.
For economics. For the what?
For the free ponies.
For the free ponies, yeah. Speaking of Nobel Peace Prize, didn't Jimmy Carter won a new Nobel Peace Prize, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what they said in the video.
In fact, I think he was the last president to win a Nobel Peace Prize for a reason. Barack Obama was the last president to win a Nobel Peace Prize for bombing children. I just got canceled on that one because we don't talk about that.
Just remember, they're American citizens.
Oh yeah, American citizens. Yeah. So for all you lefties out there, instead, if you want to remember a great Democrat, I would probably choose Jimmy Carter, not Barry, the man whose wife is actually his husband.
Big Mike. No, I mean, he actually stood by his principles, even if it was unpopular. And he used them in his governance. So, I mean, I'm not going to defend governance, but
he did.
If you're gonna have the gun, you're gonna at least try to use principles to use it, right? That's what he stood by.
That's exactly right. If you're gonna have the monopoly on violence, you might as well use it for good.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating. Let's take a compare to contrast on Donald Trump. I find it fascinating that he had issues with the World Health Organization.
It is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
the only difference
club, and if you're not going along with the flow of the program, you're not making them money, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And the only difference in my opinion, this is my opinion, everybody. The only difference between somebody like Trump and from his last stint as president and that of Jimmy Carter with like the World Health Organization is Trump was more aggravated at the fact that the United States was, or is, I should say, the largest donor to the treaty organization of the United Nations. And we don't get a true say in the matter of anything. We're just
We're
basically
getting
the
ripped
money.
off.
We're getting ripped off. But in Jimmy Carter's defense, it sounds more like he was actually at odds with the fact that you, as the World Health Organization, aren't doing your fucking jobs.
Yeah.
Which is the protection of the health, safety of the citizens of the world. That's effectively the World Health Organization, correct?
Yeah.
He basically called him out.
That's what happens when you got political influence in high power positions like that. It's that they only care about the influence. They don't care about what they're actually charged with doing.
Mm-hmm. So it makes sense when it all comes down to it. Jimmy Carter, I found that fascinating. I did not actually know that he deregulated the airline industry at the time. Because I mean, it's so you would never see it in today's world because of the rapid inflation, the increase of the money supply that is devaluing our dollar, and the consolidation of federal oppression upon the market in today's world that has kind of forced a lot of the competition to go out, and you are seeing the oligarchy of the corporate conglomerates in the airline industry kind of reign supreme again. Prices are going up, but I think that has more to do with less of a supply and demand issue and more to do with government is getting involved again and inflation. So so we're basically back at the same motif as the Carter years. I mean, I did not know that airlines were almost $800 a ticket back in the day. But it would make sense if you didn't have a whole lot of competition. And then that's kind of cool that they actually served real food, like gourmet dishes on airplanes.
Right.
But I mean, for $800, like in the video, for $800, I mean, I'd expect a good gourmet entree as well. So
Jimmy be like, okay, I'm gonna paraphrase it, but fuck them hoe ass roads.
but nowadays you're starting to see the price influx on the airline industry go up again. This time for very poor service, mainly because of the subsidy driving of the government intervening yet again, and the inflation. And so now you're just getting poor service on the airline with airplanes breaking down in midair because it's all
There's
cheap.
a union element to that too.
Yeah, there is a union element as well, which we can kind of that could be a negative drive on Jimmy Carter as well with the union element. So there are some negatives here. There are some cons to Jimmy, but at the same time, there's a reason why prices are skyrocketing in today's world when it comes to the airline industry. We're going backwards, and there's a reason why the airline industry started to kind of level out. You get the service for what you pay for. That's why you don't have the gourmet meals. And I mean, and you have to separate. You got to pay a little more if you want some extra service in first class, and because you're allowing competition to kind of gain more supreme in the market and kind of getting government out of it. And nowadays we're kind of putting government back in it because of the military industrial complex.
It's like quicksand. You're getting dragged down slowly but surely. That's what inflation is. It's just a form of quicksand.
Yeah. So, but with that, I mean, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Andrew, you have anything more to say about Jimmy Carter or anything else in your corner? Something that you can kind of lay about any news?
It's like George Costanza, that one episode of Seinfeld. Fuck them hoe ass roads. I'm out of here. I can't go any more than that. I'm going hard.
So, but if you have anything to say about Jimmy Carter or anything else to say about the government or regulations or deregulation or just want to call us a bunch of losers, go ahead, drop a
Nerd.
comment down below, and like and subscribe. I mean, and share all this because I think this was good to get out. So this has been another edition of the Legacy Rights Legacy News. That's Andrew Joseph. I'm Zachary Kaiser, the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. We'll see you. Yeah. We'll see you tomorrow, same time as every Monday through Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Jimmy.